If everyone could take their seats, I see most people are sitting. I appreciate how punctual everyone is here tonight. Um, Thank you for joining us for our 7th annual WINnovation. My name is Anne Monique. I'm the editor at Walter Magazine. And on behalf of my team and all of our partners here, I would like to thank you for showing up. We're happy to be back here in person again at the Umstead. I know many of you were there for our virtual event last year, and we're happy to have our virtual guests here as well, but it's really nice to be in a room with all these wonderful people and to be able to see your faces while I'm talking here tonight. So thank you all for coming. We've got a great program tonight. I'm really excited to hear from all 4 of our speakers. My job is mainly to say thank you to everyone and introduce everybody. So without further ado, I start the thank yous. Thank you very much to our virtual presenting sponsor, Bank of America. They've been involved since the very beginning, and they'll have an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about their involvement with WINnovation. Thank you to Diamonds Direct, our sponsor. Thank you to, they have also been longtime supporters of WINnovation. They've been with us for several years. Thank you to our workshop sponsors, Design Line Signature and Specialists in Plastic Surgery, as well as our table sponsors, the Women's Giving Network and Wegmans. Thank you to our workshop leaders, Alabi and the Authenticity Guide. I know many of you participated in the workshops ahead of time, and I've had the pleasure of sitting in with Brooke and Julia and Mary a couple times now, and it's really like always such an amazing time to get to sort of think about our careers and how we're working and think strategically about what we're doing. And as I mentioned, Bank of America has been a partner. Finally, thank you to our event partners, attended events, Alpha Graphics, and the Umstead Hotel and Spa. Without y'all, we would not have an event to come to tonight, and I hope that everybody has a great time because of them. So thank you guys too. And as I mentioned, Bank of America has been a part of WINnovation from the beginning, and I'd like to invite up Carrie Stoltz, who's the Triangle Market President for Bank of America, to talk to me a little bit more about their involvement. Hello, now it's on. Okay, hi.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me up on stage.
Oh my gosh, it's wonderful to be with you here.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I feel like, I'm just happy to have you. And do you mind just kind of explaining why Bank of America has been involved in WINnovation and how you first got involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so as Anne Monique said, I'm Carrie Stoltz, and it's amazing to be here with you and also be with the WINnovation crowd. It's been 6 years now, and WINnovation and our partnership with Walter Magazine got started in 2015, and it started with a conversation with Liza Roberts, who was the former editor, and our market manager, Virginia Parker, and me. And we were determined to find a way to do something distinct together in the triangle. And so we thought about, women's empowerment conference. We thought, a day of meetings, and we would get a big time speaker from some big city, New York, LA, let's just go big, UK, whatever, London. And as we were talking and throwing out ideas, it really came to us that we don't need to go outside this area to find really dynamic women who are leaders and who have followed their passions to develop companies or nonprofit organizations across all sectors that really make a big contribution to the economic success of this region. And so the more we talked, we thought, okay, we'll shine a bright light on these fabulous women. And then we thought, well, we don't want to do a panel. So what are we going to do instead of a panel? And we thought, well, TED Talks were all the rage. And then we thought, we can't do a TED Talk. We got to do something different than that. So the WIN Talks came up. So that's the format that you'll see tonight. And it really enables the speakers to talk and share their experience in a unique way. And gosh, this is the 6th year, and last year virtually, but it's pretty cool to see that now we've incorporated virtual in person. And so, yes, we even have a connection with one of the speakers. So super excited about that. So that's a little bit about how WINnovation got started.
Well, and I feel like just you guys are so involved in the community. I was wondering, like, what kind of ways has Bank of America responded to some of the community needs over the past year, specifically during the pandemic?
Yeah. So in 2020, back in May of 2020, I'll never forget it. Just the devastating effects of the pandemic, we were all realizing. I think that things were going to start lasting a lot longer than we originally thought. And also just all the social unrest across the country. It was just really disturbing. And we were one of the first large companies to step up. And I give all credit to our CEO, Brian Moynihan. They had been talking about something like this prior. So it was pretty timely that they were able to act pretty quickly. But we made $1 billion commitment. And the $1 billion commitment was a financial commitment that was saying to the country, look, we're here for you. We want to support communities of color. We want to support racial equality and economic opportunity for everyone, and really focus in on healthcare, affordable housing, small businesses, and jobs. I was like, there are 4 of them. And what we've done here in the Triangle is translate. So we haven't been able to donate or contribute $1 billion here in the Triangle. So that is across the nation. But it's been a significant amount of money that we got pretty quickly. And so some of the organizations that we've been able to support, not only with grants that we have, but with the additional, we call them COVID funds, are WakeMed. They're doing incredible things in the community. CASA, the United Way, Helios, and Oak City Cares, Wake Tech. So a lot of that'll give you a feel for the types of the organizations that we've been supporting. And also what we did was a little bit different. And this has been especially exciting to me, is making equity investments. So a lot of business owners and small business owners, that's been kind of a persistent problem, is access to capital and equity capital, not debt capital. And so this past year, we've invested over $250 million in 90 private equity and venture capital firms that are minority owned. And then also not only minority owned, but also focused on minority owned entities. So helping those minority small business owners start and also grow their companies. So that, in addition to supporting some of the minority-owned deposit institutions, as well as what we call as community development financial institutions. So that's like self-help credit unions here in the Triangle. So what they will do is use the funds that we contribute to make loans to people that are starting up businesses, and it really is a great way to connect with the community.
When speaking of connecting with the community, I know that's something that you're doing at a national level. Like, how does Bank of America feel about their connection to the Triangle community specifically and investing here?
Yeah. Well, so the Triangle is very special to me because I was born and raised here. So everybody's like, oh, that's
there are a few out here.
Yeah. So, that's been a special connection for me personally. And then I've been with the bank for 30 years. It's kind of hard to admit that.
It's impossible.
Yeah, I started in kindergarten. It's really, it's very unusual.
Exactly.
But seriously, so with the connection to my hometown, but also really being with the, having worked for the bank and really been given a lot of opportunities with the bank, it was a personal mission for me to grow the bank's market share here, but also the impact that we were making in the Triangle, the investments that we were making. And so just since we started WINnovation, since 2015, the bank's donated and invested over $9 million. That just seems like a lot of money. $9 million.
Crazy. Yeah.
Get my arms around that one. But in the triangle, so I talked with you guys a little bit about the philanthropic gifts and things like that, but also our employees. Our employees through matching gifts have been able to contribute. So we decide at a corporate level kind of what our focus areas are, but we also give our employees the ability to invest in the philanthropic organizations that mean a lot to them. So that's $2.2 million and 30,000 hours of volunteering. So, so proud of my colleagues at Bank of America because it really means a lot to us to not only make those financial commitments, but also live it like we're doing here tonight.
Well, and I know we so appreciate your continued commitment to WINnovation because this is kind of our way of giving back, sort of,
Yeah.
of sharing the stories of people who are doing good in our community. And so we so appreciate your support as well.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with you, Monique. And I'm just so, I was telling somebody earlier, I mean, I'm energized by this crowd and especially, the panelists, obviously, but then the question and answer after, I mean, all of the years that we've been doing this, it's amazing to hear the authentic and very candid questions and conversations that go on in a room of this size. So please know that we are in a safe space, if you will, but just feel free to ask the questions of the panelists that are really on your mind, because I think that's what really makes this event so meaningful. So you've got 4 fabulous women ahead of you, and we need to let the inspiration begin.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I guess I'll go introduce the panelists.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so without further ado, I will introduce our first panelist, who is Kristen Hess. I hope she knows she's first. Yep, she does. She's ready. Okay, so Kristen is the founder, president, and CEO of HH Architecture, a design firm focused on creating spaces for discovery, wellness, recreation, and civic service. They've been involved in all sorts of projects around the Triangle and all over, including the Steve Troxler Agricultural Science Center, the North Carolina State Farmers Market Master Plan, and the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences Dueling Dinosaurs exhibit, which I'm especially excited about, and I know my kids are too, right, kids? Yep, okay. She got her Bachelor of Architecture from NC State, and I think she's going to tell you a little bit more. Welcome to the stage.
Hi. Okay, I'm going to turn on this. I'm going to step away from that mic and turn on this mic. Can you hear me? There we go. Hi. I'm Kristen Hess, and I'm so glad to be with you tonight. And I have friends in the audience. Thank you for coming. And thank you to my new friends. I don't know all of you yet, but I look forward to getting to know all of you at some point. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm not going to tell you how I started my business because I was interviewed on a podcast for that. So if you want to hear how I started my business, you can go listen to Podcast Raleigh. But I want to share a story taking us back to 2016. It was spring of 2016. And I just found out that I had been awarded the prestigious Zhurxing Eisenhower Fellowship and that I would be traveling in the fall, 6 months away, to China for a month. And I didn't want to go. So one of the reasons, we had just been awarded the Steve Troxler Agricultural Sciences Center, which was just mentioned. It's a $107 million project, the biggest project our firm had ever been awarded by a lot. And my client, who had been my client for all the 12 years at that point that I'd been in business, and now all the 16 years that I've been in business, said, "You can't go." And I said, what do you mean? And he said, "This project's too big. I'm too scared. I've never done a project this big. you have to be here. You have to take care of me. And I said, I gotta go. You wrote me a letter of recommendation. I gotta go. Who's going to take care of me? Who's going to take care of this project? He said. I said, Siler is going to take care of you. And I thought to myself, I hope Siler can take care of you. And I went. I went to China for a month with no access to my server, no access to the company that I had built from nothing, no access to my email. I was terrified. I was the sole owner at the time of my firm, and I thought that everything lived and died by me, and I was the most important thing in the world. Who feels that way sometimes? No one's going to do it. If I am not there to do it, yeah, thank you for being honest. But I went to China with no contact to my business for a month because this fellowship was a gift. And these pictures are from the fellowship. It was a gift of being a student. It was the gift of asking questions. It was the gift of eating ginormous meals with people who were interesting and funny and human and different. It doesn't want to advance, so just keep advancing. I'll just let you click through. Just keep clicking through. And what I can tell you is that I didn't fully appreciate, when we're students and we're young, it's kind of youth is wasted on the young. I didn't appreciate the beauty of being a student and just seeing museums and culture and learning like I do now in the grind, of our businesses and our families and our busy lives, and to have that all closed off and just be allowed to think thoughts. Who just wishes? I just say that all the time. I just want to think. Just don't interrupt me. I just want to think thoughts. Anyway, so it was an amazing trip. I got back, and I don't know. What do you think happened? Do you think that my business fell apart? No. But not only did it not fall apart, it was amazing. And my client said, Siler nailed it. Of course he did. I'm so glad he did. And it led me to realize that when I get out of the way, things don't just not fall apart. Things actually can get better. People in my organization stepped up like never before. They did amazing things. They took control. They took charge. I had hired great people, and look what they did. Amazing things. So what's really cool is I decided, here are some things that I didn't really enjoy doing before. I'm not going to do those things anymore. Like email. Anybody hate email? I hired somebody to monitor my email. It is amazing. You should try it. I elevated partners within my firm. I elevated leaders within my firm. We are suddenly more scalable. We are suddenly capable of doing more, bigger things. And The World Does Not Live and Die by Kristen Hess. Everything is just fine. In fact, it's amazing. So what I learned is when they nominate you, when they call you and say, I'd like to nominate you for this fellowship, and you go, oh no, China, I'm kind of scared. Just go. Say yes. Just put your name. I didn't think I was going to get it. Imposter syndrome. Anybody got that? Everybody on the fellowship thought that they didn't belong there. Okay. And then, as scared as I was to go to China, what's so ridiculous, I was thinking about security. I was thinking about food. And this is really bad, y'all, because some of you have probably been to China and know how good the food is. But I really had this perception, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, that I would lose weight because the food would be so repulsive to me. I wouldn't even want to try it. I ate like nobody's business. I mean, those big tables with the lazy Susans, and they brought all the food out. And I'm a member of the Clean Plate Club, and I just kept eating more buns and more noodles and more duck and you name it. And the most awesome vegetarian combinations I'd ever tried and flavors I'd never thought of. And oh, I just ate it all. I gained 20 pounds. I left my pants behind in China. That is not an exaggeration. So I learned that everything will be exponentially better. And I learned that I need to go with my whole self. If I'm going to go to a conference, if I'm going to go to a professional development, I don't have to go all the way to China to do this. If I'm going to take a day and be with a client, or I'm going to go to something, a class, and I'm going to try to learn something, I have to actually be present, which is really hard to do in the US when your phone is dinging. I just have to tell a little funny. I was so scared to go. I called my brother when I got the fellowship and I said, I'm going to China for a month. And he laughed out loud and said, I'm going to buy you a mask. And we laughed because we thought that was the most preposterous thing, the idea that we might have to wear a mask. And now I'm like, where's my 50 pack? So the other thing is, while I was on the fellowship, somebody else was in charge. That was quite a luxury. I hadn't thought about what a toll that takes and how fun it is to be on the receiving end of the planning and the effort. And I got to be teachable, moldable. I got to be a student. And I think it helped me think about humility. Let's see. Go with your whole self. Say yes. Go with your whole self. Things will get exponentially better when I get out of the way. I don't know about you, but when I get out of the way, eat all the food in China. And when I came back, I was so on fire. I was so energized. And my folks were encouraged that they could actually go away. They could go try some professional development. They could go for a class. They could go for a seminar or a travel engagement. And they knew that it was going to be okay because we show them what we expect. It's like, you got to do it. So when I grew, or when I grow, everybody grows within the organization. So I'm never going to stop growing. I'm never going to stop learning. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Kristen. I think it is such a good reminder that we don't always have to be on a path. You can always kind of hop off and hop back on, and it's good for everybody, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Chidi Kumar is a chef, and she's the co-owner of Garland Restaurant. She was born in India, and then her family settled in the Bronx, New York. Who else here was born in the Bronx or in New York City? Raise your hand. Raise your hand, children. My children? Okay. All right. She went to University of Massachusetts Amherst, then moved to Raleigh to start a career as a musician. She's toured as a guitarist in the Cherry Valance and Birds of Avalon. Alongside her husband and business partner, Paul Seiler, Kumar owns King's, Neptune's Parlor, and Garland Restaurant, where she is a chef, and she's been nominated 4 times for James Beard Awards. So please come on up to the stage.
Thanks for making this really hard because you were so awesome. Really inspired by that. And so, a lot of what Anne Monique said doesn't even sound like my life. In fact, I learned to be a chef when we signed the lease on the space that included a music venue, a bar, and a restaurant. And I had supported my musician's habit by bartending. So that was the extent of my restaurant career experience, with the exception of maybe 1 year where I was making sandwiches at a sandwich shop on Glenwood Avenue. But something, I learned how to cook for my mother, my grandmother. We grew up in India. I was 8.5. And the whole time we were there, my dad and my mom, but my dad especially, was dying to go back to America. So they'd been here for 5 years before. And a little backstory, my parents were both very small children during the independence of India. So this was a time of a lot of turmoil, a lot of hope, and a lot of tragedy and terror. My grandparents were killed in the partition that formed Pakistan and India, and that was, unfortunately, my mother was a small child and she was a witness to that atrocity. So my parents were kind of ready to always make a bold change. And as insecure as an upbringing that can be for a small child, it was also inspiring when I look back on it, that at 43 years old, my dad, with 3 children, accepted a job in the Bronx making $24,000 a year and moved to America with $500. And that did not make for the most secure or happy childhood, but it did somewhere plant a seed of courage. And I guess, can I say I don't give a shit? He just decided to do it, and he did it, and we did it, and we were all there, with him. And anyway, long story short, so yeah, I moved to Raleigh. I actually moved to Raleigh to be a music manager. I was friends with guys in bands, and I loved it in the South. The city of Raleigh reminded me of Chandigarh, which is my hometown. Long story short, same architect designed, the architect who originally designed my city in India is from Raleigh. He designed Dorton Arena. He was killed while he was working on the project, and a French architect named Le Corbusier ended up getting the project. So I came on spring break to Raleigh, and I saw this place, and I just thought, this kind of feels like home, and I didn't know why. I found out later why. Anyway, so I pretended I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I just decided to do it. I was 21, and I opened a company managing my friends' bands. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. I got them big record deals. That's when big, record companies were after young bands. They were like, "Oh, who's going to be the next Nirvana? Who's going to be the next Soundgarden?" So I did this for like 5 years, and I failed. And because I was, a 26-year-old smoking a lot of pot, thinking. And in that haze, I decided to start playing guitar on my own. And we bought a prison van, an ex-prison van from the state auction lot, and went on tour. And I learned how to play in front of a bunch of strangers in a different city every night. So we did that for a decade. I bartended. My husband and 2 friends opened a music venue, and that place got torn down to build the convention center. And then we looked for a new spot, and we found a 10,800 square foot behemoth with a music venue, a restaurant, and a bar. And backstory, I had always had no less than 25 people over for dinner. Everybody always had said, "You should open a restaurant." And I just went, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." So I did it. And then the terror really started, and the terror hasn't really stopped. Um, you know, every day I wonder if I made the right choice. Every day I wonder why I find myself in this career. It took me 5 years to even call myself a chef. I didn't really even start doing it till after I lost my mom, and I got nominated for a James Beard Award next year. So, talking about bold choices and decisions, here we are in September of 2021, 18, 19 months into the pandemic, and our industry is decimated. We've had, the gamut of challenges, everything from, just operating the most unsafe business that you can, a virus that is spread by mouth spray, sorry. um, you know, much justified protests but we did suffer a lot of damage from that, and then a lot of reckoning of our industry. Our industry is pretty messed up. It is built on a lot of poisonous roots, and you know, it costs so much money to make food. Food is undervalued in our community, in our country. It always has been, from the growing of it to the picking of it to the harvesting and the processing to the preparation to the serving. Nobody wants to pay what it's really worth, not to mention what it does to the planet. And these were always things that, you're always kind of thinking about, and you try to source locally and recycle and, sell your fryer oil and really try to pay people what you can, but there's no money. And when you cut your business by 70%, it's really, really hard. And you don't know if you're going to keep your lease. These are all challenges that we are kind of facing every day now. And I can't help but feel the same kind of grief that I did after I lost my mother. And I think about when that happened, it was such a surprise. And when you're encountered with that kind of situation, you can't help but think, what is my life really about? What do I really want? What's important to me? And I cannot imagine that there isn't a single person in this room that hasn't really thought those things in the last year. Whatever your job is, you wonder, is this all there is? Whatever your, day-to-day life is, and you just wonder, is this all there is? Because we've all almost lost all of it, right? We've lost every touchstone we have. We've lost the ability to hug each other and see each other and fly and go to restaurants and go to shows and, these little things that don't mean that much by themselves, but in their totality add up to an enriched life. And without that, the stripping is very intense. And I don't know, I feel like I don't really know what's going to happen to my restaurant, honestly. I hope it survives. But every day I get sort of a message that I didn't do quite well enough. And I think, when you employ people, if you're an employer of people, you might have had that experience in this last year. And I am willing to accept all of the criticism, but I also don't know how to manage a team of people and write new menus every month and a half during a pandemic. Nobody trained me to do that. So I guess I don't really have a point except to say that if you're feeling lost, I don't think that you're alone, and because I hope I'm not. I do really feel like this is a time for us to really, we have no choice but to lead with our joy, to really get connected with what we want, and to picture a life without any of the things around us that we feel are important, because they're really not. Obviously, anything can all go away. So I guess at the end of the day, I try to really connect to what makes me happy. When do I feel most like myself? And the people that don't see me for who I am can just vanish. They can just go away. I won't say what I really mean, but and that's a challenge. It takes a lot of practice to do that, but I like to practice. I like to practice my knife cuts. I like to practice my guitar solos. I like to practice. I didn't practice my speech, obviously, but so hopefully, if you're in a crux, if you're in a transition, it's the best time ever to like shed all of the shit that you don't want to carry around and just go forth light as a feather.
Thank you. It's hard to follow that with just a. All right. Well, next speaker. Okay. But I will. So our next speaker is Elena Ashburn. Dr. Ashburn is a principal at Broughton High School, and she started there. She started there in 2017. There, her team has dramatically increased promotion and teacher retention rates. She grew up in Virginia and attended Longwood University. She began her career as a teacher at Southern Durham High School, then earned a master's of school administration and a doctorate of education at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So please come up to the stage.
Kristen, thanks for making this a safe enough place for me to say that I hate work email. But y'all, I work in public ed, so I can't hire someone. So tonight I'm forwarding all my emails to you. Yeah, because women we gotta be allies, right? It was a freezing cold morning in February 2013. I pulled the front office door all the way to allow a 16-year-old Drew, his mom, and his dad to walk inside and get some relief from the cold. I followed them in and we made our way towards the conference room. The four of us entered that room and sat down at a long table. The tension between us was thick and my heart was racing. I knew that Drew's parents wouldn't let this end the way that I thought that it should. I was a high school assistant principal, just 27 years old. The day before, my colleague and I had suspended Drew and a friend of his from school after they decided to engage in some, well, extracurricular behavior not permitted by school rules. My colleague and I had done everything correctly in conducting an investigation, and the facts were clear that the two students were, in fact, in violation of the school's rules. Now, this was not our first interaction with Drew. Drew was a very bright kid with loads of potential, but he was constantly in a power struggle, and he simply just made poor choices. Our son didn't do anything. Drew's father was a dominating presence in the conference room. He was a large man with an equally large personality. As he leaned into the table, he stared me square in the eyes, and he hadn't let go of that locked death glare from the moment he sat down. Drew's dad continued, "You say he did this thing, but he didn't. What makes you so sure that he did?" I tried to explain to him. "Sir, you're going to have to calm down. Do not tell me to calm down. This is not right. My son didn't do anything wrong, and he will not be suspended." At this point, Drew's dad was livid. I knew there was nothing I could say to make him realize that Drew had in fact violated the school's rules. Recognizing that this was not going very well, I decided to take a different, potentially softer approach and reframe the conversation. I took a deep breath. "Sir, I understand that you're upset about your son's suspension. As a mother myself, I know that you care deeply about Drew and his education." Drew's dad quickly put up his hand, cutting me off. His eyes had widened. "Wow." He looked over at his wife, his hand still in the air, and he gave her a look as if he had just heard a great joke. He turned his face back towards me, his hand still in the air, and he said in sarcastic amusement, "Wow, Miss Ashburn, I'm surprised to hear that you're a mother." As American women in business, we are all engaged in a culture completely obsessed with work, where exhaustion is glorified and where women are encouraged, maybe guilted, into doing it all. And we're not just encouraged to do it all, but to be perfect at it all. To be perfect employees, perfect partners, perfect mothers, perfect homemakers, and of course, also perfect in how we look as we do it all perfectly. In my current role as a high school principal, I lead a large community, around 200 employees, one of whom, Babs Nichols, the greatest teacher of all time, is in the back, 2,200 students, and of course, all their mamas and daddies, about 4,000 of them. In addition to my work, I'm a wife to my favorite person on earth, Matt Ashburn, a United Methodist pastor, and I'm mother to 3 children, 2 girls, but then one sweet boy, Philip, the apple of my eye, with whom I am completely obsessed. That sweet boy is just 1 year old. Now, why am I telling you all these things? It's because when people learn that I'm a high school principal and a wife and a mom to 3 young children, I nearly always, and I mean always, get one particular question from the women I meet. And that question is, "Elena, how do you balance it all?" Now, I'm interested in testing a hypothesis that I have. All of us are women in business. I bet a significant number of us partners and probably some mothers in here. I'm interested, by a show of hands, raise your hand if you have ever gotten this question. How do you balance it all? Now look around the room. Okay, put your hands down. Exactly. Did you see how many women in the room raised their hands? Nearly all of us. Now, why did nearly every woman in the room raise her hand? I believe it's because as women, we're expected to carry a wider, heavier load, and that the expectation is to balance it all with perfection. So when women meet other women, they want to know the great, perfect balance secret, right? They go to the woman they perceive is balancing it all, and they just are dying to know. Elena, it appears to me that you've unlocked the secret to perfect balance. Please, dear God, tell me, how do you balance it all? Now, let's go back to Drew's dad. What did he mean when he said, I'm surprised to hear that you're a mother? I believe that Drew's dad couldn't reconcile the fact that I was both powerful and a loving mother. And I know his comment wasn't just his own, but instead representative of a social construct in which leadership is reserved for men, not women, and most certainly not mothers. I'll admit that after Drew's dad's comment, I spent the next 10 years trying to prove that man wrong. And I started to chase balance of successful employee, fabulous wife, and Instagram-worthy mother to show him and everyone else that I could, in fact, balance all those things. And what happened over the next 10 years were many successes, yes, but also what happened were many, many wounds. Wounds of pain and guilt, thinking that I would be able to do all the things all the time and be everything to everyone. Until finally, I came to a very liberating discovery. And that is the admission that the concept of balance isn't possible. Oh, yeah, okay. I say unabashedly that the chase for balance is actually harmful to women. It requires us to strip ourselves of our identities. It is a hamster wheel. We think we are advancing women's efforts by trying to achieve some equilibrium and to have it all, but we're actually setting ourselves and others up to chase something that simply cannot be reached, and then we feel like we're failing at all the things all the time. So, what is the solution? Instead of running the hamster wheel, chasing perfect balance, let's prioritize. Let's lean into and celebrate the multiple beautiful facets of what it means to be a woman. As successful women in business and in our lives, let's permit ourselves and the women we employ to excel strongly in business when that is the priority, to excel strongly in their personal lives when that is the priority, and to excel strongly in motherhood when that is the priority. Let's permit ourselves and the women we employ to set priorities for success across work and life. Now, this requires much more than just acknowledgement. It requires advocacy to demand a livable wage for our most vulnerable women. Yeah. To demand better workplace flexibility and creativity, to demand better internship and career experiences for women, to demand equitable maternity leave policies, and damn it, to get more women in the boss's chair. And in the end, those demands are going to make for better and happier employees, partners, and mothers. So now, when you get that question, how do you balance it all? Let's speak truth and say, there is no such thing as balance, honey. Get off the hamster wheel and take a nap. We owe it to ourselves, to our female employees, and most certainly to our little girls, to show them that prioritizing is not only acceptable, but that it leads to joy, fulfillment, and yes, more productivity, both in work and in life.
Thank you very much, Elena. That was awesome. Okay, and I'd like to introduce our last speaker. Courtney Napier is the founder of Black Oak Society, as well as a writer, journalist, and anti-racism coach. She's written for national and regional publications such as Walter, The Carolinian, and Indie Week. She founded Black Oak Society, a collective of Black creatives whose literary publication, Boss Magazine, is focused on giving Black Raleigh her flowers now. Napier coaches individuals and organizations on how to undermine white supremacy and honor the humanity of all people. Up to the stage, please.
Wow, y'all. This has been a night already. Kristen, Elena, Chidi, wow. Wow. You all are phenomenal. And I'm so thankful and grateful for your vulnerability and your transparency to share your stories. So my speech today is called Your Story is Our Asset. That worked pretty well, doesn't it? I promise it wasn't coordinated, but it always works out this way. So today is a celebration. Tonight is a celebration of all of us. All of us women, femmes, non-binary siblings, our disabled sisters, Black sisters, Indigenous, white, Latinx, and those in the Suwana region. We celebrate our AAPI sisters, all of us. And I have a message for you. Your story is our asset. Not just yours. No, your story is a gift to us all. It is a critical piece of the puzzle of our collective flourishing, our collective liberation. I am a Black cisgendered queer woman. I am a mother, a partner, a woman of faith, a writer, a journalist. I love myself and my story, but it took a long time to get here. I was raised here in Raleigh. After my dad was stationed at a recruitment office in downtown Raleigh, we moved from California and made Raleigh our home. I attended Benson Memorial Preschool. I don't know if there are any like longtime Raleigh residents who know the church way up on the hill over Crabtree Valley Mall. That's where I went to preschool. Yeah, that's awesome. It's such a cute place. And then I went to Underwood Elementary. We've already connected with some like Underwood grads. And that held so many new experiences for me. My first kiss, I know in kindergarten. I know that's horrifying now. I have a 7-year-old. My first kiss. I learned to play the violin, and it was my first experience with racism. In 2nd grade, a new girl came to our school who was white, and she walked up to my friend and my friend Allison, who was also white, and we were playing fairies on the playground, and the new girl walked up to me and said, "You can't play with her because you're Black." And Allison and I looked at each other with different eyes after she said that. They weren't new eyes, they were old. They were old and ugly. The looks on our faces were distorted as we tried to understand what this information meant. I walked away ashamed for not knowing, and embarrassed for being caught not knowing. From that point, my relationship with my story became more and more strained. One event after another told me that I needed to be different, and it needed to be different. From my antsy limbs and my difficulty focusing, to how I wore my hair, to the music I chose to listen to. There was a little bit of Destiny's Child, and a little bit of John Mayer, and a little bit of Coldplay, and a little bit of Jay-Z. Everything was a question. It was exotic. either exemplary or anomalous, but never normal. But this isn't a sob story. This is actually a rage story. After I got married in 2011, been married for 10 years. That's another TED Talk. We moved to Winston-Salem, and my spouse and I were broke. Not just broke. So we read a lot. My spouse has the most incredible collection of books, including many that he bought while in college attending women's studies classes and African American studies classes. One of the first books I picked up was Frederick Douglass's Slave Narrative. And then I picked up The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. And then my mom bought me a copy of a book called The Rebellious Life of Rosa Parks. And I became incensed at what I was reading. Not the stories themselves. No, those fed my soul in a way that I had never experienced. It was the fact that at almost 30 years old, it was the first time I had ever encountered these stories. In a state that is 22% Black, I had never read any of these books in school. I had never known these people who spent their whole lives fighting to give me freedom. And some of them that are enduring the same atrocities that me and my peers were experiencing today. So our landlord at the time in Winston-Salem, he was an alumni of Broughton High School in the 60s. And he was the most delightful man. He and his wife decided to gift us with a subscription to The Atlantic because they wanted to make sure we were exposed to good culture. In June of 2014, the infamous reparations issue arrived in our mailbox. It's hard to describe all the emotions that ebbed and flowed through my body while reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' groundbreaking article. One was rage, it's a theme, but another was an awakening, a memory of my love for words, journalism, and storytelling that I had abandoned in some time in my childhood. Coates' conversations with everyday people and experts mixed with his mesmerizing prose quaked my soul. It shook something loose. It reminded me that everything I had been reading for the last month had transformed me. The stories that I was reading were the catalyst of that transformation. Flash forward to 2019, the summer of 2019. I attended an event in Raleigh about the affordable housing crisis. We had moved since then. That's yet another TED Talk. I encountered a table of frustrated housing activists and longtime Raleigh residents from rapidly gentrifying historically Black neighborhoods. They shared their stories with me, and I was compelled to write about the encounter. Though I didn't have a journalism or creative writing degree, I had to write the story. That story changed my life. I believe it also changed the city because it was the beginning of a time where our neighbors were able to read about the people that they were passing by every day and ignorant of their significance and pain. I've since received emails and phone calls from people who say, in one way or another, that they have been impacted by these stories that I write. But it's the stories that are powerful. Stories that at times were sources of anger or shame or sadness for the people that I was interviewing. But they bravely shared, and the ripple effect shifted souls. So, what's your story? How did you get here? No, not the cover letter version. Not the CV or portfolio or social media version. I'm talking about the version that your partner knows, the version that your mother knows. I'm talking about the version that your therapist knows, or maybe the one that no one knows. I'm here to encourage you to reflect on that story. I implore you to find stories like yours that show you what's possible when you divorce yourself from the shame or fear that some person or some societal supremacist delusion taught you that you had to hide this story to survive. I urge you, in the way that makes you feel most powerful, to share your story with the world. Because in the same way that Rosa Parks' story and Frederick Douglass' story shaped me, the same way that James Baldwin and Anna Julia Cooper's stories have shaped me, the same way that Octavia Rainey and Miss Lynette Williams' story shaped me into the woman I am today, your story will do the same. Your story is powerful. The wisdom you were born with and the wisdom you have gained in this life is a lifeline for someone else. It is also the answer to your deepest calling. It is the thread that connects us all to one another, strengthening our collective power against oppressive forces, colonialism, and capitalism. We are our own answer, and our stories, with all the joy and pain, hardship and mistakes, losses and triumph, are our greatest assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Courtney. And we've been honored to have Courtney share some of her stories within Walter, which is part of the reason why we know each other, which is pretty special. Thank you again to our four panelists for talking tonight, to Kristen, Chidi, Elena, and Courtney. I see that most people have their plates cleared. We actually have a little break now for everybody to stretch their legs, use the ladies, or the three of you men could use the men's. I think we're going to take like a 15-minute break, and then there's a chance to get dessert, and then we'll have our panelists come back for the question and answer session. Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we are ready. If anybody has their first question, I have Kate and her two underage assistants who will be running the microphones around. So please, raise your hands with enthusiasm. And if people are feeling shy, I do have some questions. Who wants to go first? Me? Okay. Hold on, let me do it. Okay. So I feel like some of you addressed this in your talks, but I think one thing people are curious about is how has your perspective on work or your career changed over the last year? I don't know if you want to raise your hand or just start talking, or how we want to do it.
I know that for me, it changed dramatically because I didn't work. Before the pandemic, I was a stay-at-home mom, which is really my dream.
Which is, by the way, a lot of work.
Yes. Okay, so let me just start over. First of all, I was the CEO of my house and my two children.
Yes.
But that was what I wanted to do. My mom who's here and my sister. My mom was amazing and is amazing, and I just wanted to be her when I grew up, And so I was getting to do that, and then the pandemic hit, and then we had some employment changes in my home, and that's when I needed to kind of make my writing hobby into the writing career. And so that's what we did. And I had also just started Black Oak Society that December, so our very first magazine was coming out in March. And right as the pandemic was shutting all the doors for retail and all those things, our very first publication was coming out. And so I remember January 2021 was back. I hustled the shit out of 2020. I mean, every single opportunity to write, I wrote, whether it was a $50 article or a $500 article. I just did anything that came my way, and it was intense, very intense. So 2021, I was much more intentional.
and really decided if I'm going to be working hard, I want to be doing what I want to do, writing the stories I want to write, and that's why I'm still writing for Walter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, for me, what I thought was a path, a career path, what that looked like from day to day. And, we were on this, feeding train every single day. And then, I have to say when we decided to close the restaurant a day before the governor mandated restaurants to shut down, it was scary, awful. I mean, we called each and every one of our employees, and there were 45 of them, to, lay them off. We didn't lay off all of them, actually, but I don't know. I think it was like staring into this unknown and abyss kind of thing. You get to see, and then it was hustle, scrappy, like, oh, I'll do this cooking demo for the doctor at Duke, and then we'll make these meal kits for the produce box, and couldn't we just do meal kits at the restaurant? And like, everything was shifting, and it just kind of opened up the idea that there's more than one way to have a career in food. And I don't know that I'll necessarily explore any of that, but it's just nice to know that there's freedom in that. Sometimes you find freedom in other places.
So I work in an industry that is dominated by women. And there's a clear sexual division of labor in my industry, right? 75% of our workforce in the classroom is female, 25% at best of our superintendents are women. So I think for me, over the last 18 months in particular, one thing that was eye-opening for all of us is that educators have never been trusted to work from home, ever, right? Like that wasn't a thing. We weren't allowed to do it. Don't even think about it. How could you ever do your job outside of the classroom, right? And the pandemic blew that totally up. So for me as an employer, I would say I just leaned into that really hard. So unless you have to be in the classroom teaching kids, I'm trying to be as flexible as possible with teachers, right? Like I trust you to do your work outside the school building so that you can watch your kids, et cetera, while you do all that. So for me, I think our industry in particular was really affected by the opportunity to work remotely, which had never been done before for women on the front line.
We were considered essential, and we weren't really allowed to stop. And that was very stressful. Sending employees, I mean, first thing we did is like printed cards, like we're allowed to be out. We're supposed to be out. Everybody was just terrified to go to the job site and inspect the work, or, try to have a coordination meeting or whatever. But I learned a lot about everybody is fearful about really different things, and everybody's family situation is so different, and it's just impossible to make any kind of assumption ever. It's a bad idea for me to make assumptions, period, but it's a really bad idea for me to make an assumption about what somebody else's family is going through. And so we were just hit with a lot of stories and a lot of, just whatever it was, everybody just had stuff going on like we all have. And so there's a lot of my team pitching in and helping one another. Like I'll cover it, or I'll do it, or we'll do this instead, or whatever. And that was pretty reassuring that everybody had everybody's back. But it was terrifying too, because there's really, you don't know everybody on the job site. You don't know all the plumbers and electricians, and so you just don't know what you're walking into. And yet the work has to go on. So that was a little scary, I have to admit. But it's better now, I guess, sort of. I don't know. Is it?
Interesting. Thank you. Does anyone? Oh, I see a question back there.
Yes. Brave soul. Love it.
Run, Kate, run.
Before she changes her mind.
Hi, it's a virtual question.
Nice.
Yes.
Even better.
Okay, let's see. From Angela. Are there any things or any one thing that you would do to monitor and or take care of your mental health in your respective fields?
Go to China.
Well, we were fortunate enough to get access to a telehealth program. And I think telehealth has been one thing that was like a really good silver lining out of the pandemic, and
true.
teaching virtually, but also healthcare virtually, and the access to mental health without having to find a therapist in town who's taking patients and drive there and hope that you like them, all of that. I've been in therapy for most of my adult life, and I was fortunate, like my therapist moved to Texas 3 years ago, and we've been FaceTiming ever since. So we were pioneers in telehealth. But we got access to a program called Healthiest You, and we were able to not very expensively sign up every one of our employees to have remote access to not just physical health, but therapists. And therapy is what you make of it. So, how much effort they put into it is their business. I don't ask, but we pay, and it's free. It's 24/7. It's 365. It's good for them, for their family, and their kids. I hope it lasts forever. My God. I mean, our goal is to be able to provide, actual health insurance for our employees, but we're not there yet. We're small, struggling, even more struggling now. This is an important thing, and I know that even the folks that ended up going back to school or whatever, really appreciate that.
I know that for me, this was kind of facing a lot of things that I allowed to be buried for a long time. We, in our own family, had a lot of, some difficult moments with my cousin who found out that she had cancer last year. And so on January 6th, I had wrapped up an interview with 2 students who were talking to me about discrimination and police brutality in the school. And then when I wrapped up that interview, I went onto Facebook, and my cousin was sharing a video of herself from her hospital room, talking about her cancer battle. And then as I scroll down after watching her, I saw the insurrection. And I had been covering the election in 2020 with an amazing group of journalists with Galwag magazine. And so all those things happened on the same night. Like, it was a matter of a few hours. And it really broke me. I mean, it like the dam just kind of broke for me. And so about a month after that, I had my annual kind of checkup thing, and my doctor, the nurse brings in the whole like mental health check thing, which is like, have you thought about hurting yourself in the last, 2 weeks? And I'm like, yes, and so I'm just trying to be honest. And my doctor came in and said, this appointment's gonna be a little different. And that's when I got to start seeing a therapist, and I've been seeing a therapist since March, and I have a psychiatrist who I have, meds that I take now to help me kind of traverse this stuff, the things from the past and the things in the present. And I honestly feel better than I have in many, 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 many years, which is incredible. But it really, it took too much to make me care about that. I think as women, oftentimes we kind of like, if we can get out of bed and get dressed and get the kids ready or get to work or whatever, then we think like we're good, or we're fine, which is our favorite phrase. We're fine, everything's fine. But I think after that process of finding, 2 amazing therapists, one over the summer, and then I just started with another one who's phenomenal, and then, having things to help me with my fidgety ADHD and help with the anxiety that I deal with. And I realized, oh, there's something else beyond fine. I don't have to just be fine all the time. I can actually be good. I can actually feel great. I can actually like look in the mirror and think, oh, that's not that bad. Like she's actually cute, or, you know, be happy with the work that I do, or you know what I mean? Like not feel so overwhelmed all the time. There's something else that's available. That is what I was introduced to during the pandemic. I think I had to sit around long enough to realize that, you know? So yeah, it was a major shift for me as far as mental health and taking care of myself. And Monique has, you know, written that out with me a little bit too, a couple of our emails and stuff. But yeah, and so I'm very bittersweet this year, but that was something that I've taken away that's made a major impact.
Sure. You know, so when you're an educator and you have, like at our school, Babs over there, she teaches 6 classes of like, let's say 30 kids. That's a whole lot of kids, right? So you hang with that many teenagers all the time. You know, teenagers are awesome. They got lots of emotions, right? So you carry all their emotions. And then remember, I talked about all their mamas and their daddies too that email you now, right? Like that also feel some kind of way. So all that to say that educators manage a lot of emotions. It is a really emotional job and can be very heavy, much more than people perceive it to be. And often educators are punching bags, right? And we got to do all the things and fix all the things that, you know, the politicians get wrong. So let's let the schools handle that. We don't know how to feed people, so let's let the school do that, right? We don't know how to teach them how to do right, so let's let the school do that, right? So I say all that to say, in my opinion, mental health of our staff is really dependent on the camaraderie and the community of the team. And in absence of that, it's an impossible job. So I have tried to focus really hard on, first and foremost, building a team, a rock solid team that supports and cares for one another. That is what's going to get us through the angry emails or the teenager that, you know, just has a bad day, ends up cussing you out, and those kind of things. That's what's going to carry you through and remind you and keep you coming each day.
Thank you, guys. Do you have any other questions from the audience? We're quiet today. Do you have another virtual question? All right. Okay, you got a question.
She ends it.
All right.
Woo, that's a young leg.
Girl.
Yeah.
Hello. Awesome. What is something that you would tell your 20-something self?
Just one thing. Just kidding. You can say as many things as you want.
You don't have to drink the whole case of beer.
Yeah.
Oh, you said 20, not 21. My bad. My bad.
I would say take a Q-tip and tape it to your mirror. Quit taking it personally. I learned that from a parenting counselor. I was struggling with my then young son, and I was just so upset about everything that he was doing to me. He was doing it all to me. And this applies to any one of you. You're doing it to me, right? I was just taking everything way too personally. And I think that started when I was an adolescent. And so she said, I want you to take a Q-tip and tape it to your mirror. And I want you to quit taking it personally. And I think about that now all the time with every interaction. That is somebody else's stuff that they've got going on. It has absolutely nothing to do with me.
That's right.
So.
Just go down the row if you want.
It's so close, so far away. My 20-year-old self. I think what I would tell my 20-year-old self is that weird is cool. You know?
Weird is cool.
Weird is okay. You know, I don't have to fit in. Fitting in is the worst. I love Brene Brown. I don't know if there are any Brene Brown fans out there, but she talks about the difference between a sense of belonging and fitting in, and how fitting in is actually like, you know, undermines belonging because you're changing yourself in order to be a part of the group, and belonging is being accepted for who you are. And I think I confused fitting in and belonging a lot as a young person. So I would just, you know, say, be myself, and the people who connect with that will come, and the people who don't will go away. It's a win-win.
I love that. Can I steal it?
Yeah.
Ditto.
I think for me, to not be so goal-oriented and to really enjoy the journey and the process and realize that, I mean, I wish somebody would have told me the average person in this country now has 3 careers in their life, because I wouldn't have put so much pressure on myself to be something and succeed and, you know, be on the track. I think making those choices for yourself and really, you know, again, I don't think those principles ever really go away, but it starts when you're, you know, 20 and you don't have an answer for what you want to do with your life, and it kind of paralyzes you. I think that's, you forget to learn to enjoy every day, to just enjoy the work for the sake of the work.
Yeah, mine wasn't seriously about the beer, but
Mine was.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, right.
I would say lean in. I didn't lean in enough early on, so I wish that I would tell myself, lean in, dream big, have fun.
Thank you, guys. Another question? Oh, I got a question here. Your microphone holder is coming.
What are you most optimistic about for the future?
Oh, children. Absolutely. I am so moved by kids. Like, they get it right. Everything we do wrong, they get it right. They are inclusive, thoughtful. Yeah, kids give me so much hope for the future. We're in good hands.
I agree with that.
I agree.
I
It's the best
agree.
answer.
I mean, like Gen Z is my favorite. I love Gen Z. I'm a millennial, and I feel like there's some, you know, some random beef sometimes between Gen Z and millennials. But I think like Gen Z is so cool because they just are. You know, my youngest sister is 19, and she just is. I mean, she thinks she's the coolest, and whatever anybody else thinks is not her concern. And I think that's really awesome. They just, you know, they're about their gender and their sexuality and their stories, wherever their, you know, their countries of origin and their family's heritage and things. They really embrace all of that.
Yeah.
And you know, I think Audre Lorde says it's not difference that harms us, it's our inability essentially to embrace that difference. It's our fighting against the differences that we have that cause us the most problems. And I really see Gen Z embodying this sense of like embracing the differences and enjoying being around people who are different than them. And I think that's just really cool. And I kind of want to be like, I want to be like my sister Stephanie, you know, like I want to just, like, it's all vibes, it's chill, like whatever they say, you know, yeet and all the things.
I agree. Children, I'm a lifelong Girl Scout. Anybody a Girl Scout?
Yeah.
Got some Girl Scouts in the room. And I'm not a leader, I'm on the board, but I get to be around a lot of different Girl Scouts. And they are amazing. Have you heard a Gold Award Girl Scout speak about her Gold Award project these days? I mean, when I did my Gold Award, it was like in the era of Barbara Bush, and we did a library makeover, and I read to some kids, and I did a book drive or whatever. These gals are like creating curricula for students to get involved in medicine and robotics, and they're creating anti-violence campaigns in their schools, and they're taking on plastics in the ocean. And I'm like, holy mackerel, how, this is so overwhelming. And they're doing it in such a graceful and impressive way. So I echo the youth statement, but I'm always like, I'm optimistic when I'm around Girl Scouts. Because Girl Scouts are doing some cool work.
For me, I think being in nature and any kind of artistic expression gives me a lot of reassurance, because nature is innately wise and knows how to take care of itself if we don't get in the way. And just seeing a piece of art or hearing a song that's well crafted or reading a good book is a really pure expression of somebody at their most, honest. And, that makes me feel hopeful, and it gives me a lot of energy.
Nice. All right, another question. Oh, we got another audience question.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. That's how my voice sounds. Great. 3 glasses of wine. Great. Okay. Question is, what is your favorite thing that you have outsourced during the last year? And it can be personal, professional, vacation, doesn't matter. What's the best decision making on outsourcing a task that you've made during the last year? Thank you.
Bookkeeping. Yeah, excellent bookkeepers are a godsend. They'll pay for themselves in 2 weeks.
Getting people to, paying people to read your email.
I actually had a meeting with a marketing person today. This morning, first thing, as I'm rushing out of the shower and wet hair and everything, I'm like, "Hi, friends," and I'm super excited about that. But I think honestly, online grocery shopping.
Oh yeah,
that's probably the greatest invention of all time, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
I was just racking my brain of what is outsourced. Because I work in public ed, remember? And I just realized what it is. My sweet husband has been making me lunch for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a key.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the best.
Any other audience questions? One of you.
I was wondering, what do you think, as being a woman, how do you think that's helped you excel in your leadership in your respective industries? What do you bring to the table because you're a woman?
So as a journalist and as a writer, I've written for quite a few publications at this point, and the publications run by women are my favorite ones to write for. And I think it's because there's something about, storytelling is a very human thing to do. I think people forget that journalism is storytelling. Well, men sometimes often forget that. Women don't seem to forget that. Women seem to, very short story, kind of, dramatic, but it is what it is. But I was writing a piece about method, and we wrote it end of last year, and during the interviews, the matriarch of the family passed away. Like literally, right there, like my phone was used to call the ambulance and so it rattled me like majorly. And I remember, reaching out to Monique because it was supposed to come out. I can't remember, I think the February issue. And I was like, I can't listen to the interviews right now because all of that, like my recorder was still on during the whole thing. I'm like, I can't listen to it yet. And she was like, okay, you just let me know when you're ready. And so she let me, go through what I needed to go through to finally be able to listen to it and get it transcribed and all those things you have to do to interacting with this story. And it ended up being one of the stories that I'm most proud of. But
It's a great story.
Thank you. But I really appreciate the fact that and Monique gave me the time and space to write it, and to, she saw me as a person, she saw it as a story of people, keeping the humanity of everyone involved in her mind, and kind of let me process and come back to it. That was like a very, very, very meaningful thing for me. And I'm glad I get to tell that story in front of everybody and brag about you. But yeah, I think women are amazing at keeping the human element inside a world that can get very dehumanizing, which is journalism. And so, yeah, if you're any writers out there, look at the masthead before you pitch your story, because if a woman's in charge, it's going to be a much different experience, and usually a very positive one.
I think women are good collaborators. I think we're natural team builders. I think we know that we can't get there alone. We all got to pitch in and help, and we're all going to roll up our sleeves and do it together. And we know how to ask other people to, like, come on, I need your help. Let's do it. Come on, get in here. And it feels good to build a good team. And it feels really natural for us, I think.
Yeah, I agree with the collaboration part for sure. I would also say, I think the high school principalship is dominated by men, right? It's rare to have women in the high school principalship, but then certainly women that have school-aged children is very rare. So I think in particular for me, trying to just be a mother and model what it is to be a working mom, I think is what makes me a little bit unique. And I think allows that to happen more often. And I'm certainly not the only one, but just to show people that you can do it. And yes, it's hard, but it's a reality.
I think that we have the ability to multitask, and most women have odd paths to get to where they are, because we're not really, generally speaking, I mean, there are exceptions, of course, these like driven, career-oriented, there's a lot of options available to us. And I think having an unconventional perspective on life gives you a lot of empathy, and you learn to understand how different people learn differently, different people react differently and absorb information. And they have, I think we're observers to a great extent. We learn how to listen from a young age, and that really helps us be good leaders. And it may not be traditional and may be off-putting to somebody who really needs a lot of structure and like a role model that's like really in charge and knows everything. Well, sorry, go look for someone else, But I think, having a winding path is a little bit really valuable sometimes.
I think there was another question that someone wanted to answer up here in the front. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. I'm born and raised in Raleigh. I love the city. This past year, there's definitely been some moments that made me just disappointed in the city, but I always managed to find the bright spots. So for women who could live anywhere you wanted to, set aside familial ties and, well, this is where I work, what keeps you here? What keeps you inspired by Raleigh?
Great question. The people, like these people, like y'all. I mean, that's it. Without the connection and our ability to relate to each other in different circumstances, small and large, we have nothing.
There's some really incredible history here, and living legends like all around us in Raleigh. And I was able, like a dear friend is Mr. Joseph Holt, whose family was the first to attempt to integrate Raleigh City schools in 1959. And he is just the most phenomenal person, like his stories and his knowledge of the city and all the people that he knows. And other times I get to like dig around in the Carolinians like back, issues from the 50s and the 60s. And I just love, like, there's just so many hidden gems about Raleigh. And it's a weird place because I feel like Raleigh is a little adolescent in a sense of like they want to be something besides what it is sometimes. But it is, it's like I want to talk to like Raleigh's 20-year-old self, like, you're cool, man. Like, like
Stop
lean
trying
in.
so hard.
Yeah, stop trying so hard, bro. Like, you're cool.
Vibe.
But yes, yeah, it's a vibe, Raleigh.
vibe,
Like, come
Raleigh.
on. But yeah, there's so many cool, like, I mean, I encourage you all, if you haven't had opportunities to go to like John Chavis Memorial Park or walk around the MLK Memorial Garden or walk around, St. Aug's campus or go to the what is it, the Richard B. Harrison Library downtown and go into the reading room where they have amazing like first edition books from, authors, Black authors, all the way from like, the 1800s. There is just, we have like one of the best art museums ever. I think there's just so many things here that often we take for granted because we think we need the biggest, newest thing. But the things that already exist, the old, sometimes crumbling corners of the city have so much richness. So I haven't discovered them all yet. So that's why I'm still here.
Parks. You already named several of them, but it's the park system and the greenways that I think make our city so special. There's somebody in the audience that really cares about parks. She's giving me.
I like that Raleigh has a lot of opportunity, but still feels small.
Yeah.
I agree with that too. Yeah. I think we have time for one more question. Okay, it's over here somewhere.
Closer.
Close it.
No pressure.
Thank you. This past year and a half has been super heavy. But as a woman, what do you think is the most important thing that Wake County needs to move forward in the society that we're in?
Big last question.
First of all, can we just, that was a really good one. Really, yes.
One thing?
Well, I know, right? That was like my first kind of, housing. And I want to take that a step further and challenge any journalists in the room, writers, media people, to really pay attention to how you're writing stories involving housing. Because housing is a human right. Housing is the building blocks of a neighborhood.
Housing. Cool house.
Our
people.
yes.
Cool people in the room who care about
Well, I'm
housing.
talking to y'all. I need you. But our communities, they are a stability for our families. They are the starting points for our businesses. They're wealth for families who are oftentimes shut out from other ways of getting wealth. For instance, people who want to start a business oftentimes borrow against their home. People who want to go to college often do that. And so if they don't have that housing, if they don't have that first asset, then everything that they try to build from that point becomes more and more unsure. And then you just start ending up in a community where you have people who have everything they need and probably so much more. And you have people that are just barely scraping by and literally have to just take whatever it is that they're given, which really makes for a very strange electorate. It's hard to hold politicians accountable when you have people who don't have the bandwidth to care about politics because they're working 80 hours a week. Then you have another group of people who benefit so much from the status quo that they're not going to do anything to make change. And so that's kind of what housing is, so much more than a house. It's so much more than an AMI. I just wish that number would go away because it's inherently just not okay. But it's so much more than that. They're people, their families, their communities. There's, you know, their neighborhood block parties, their graduation parties. There's, you know, a newlywed family's first thing that they made and bought together. Like it represents so much more than just the materials and the land. So I just challenge our amazing media community here to remember that as we're writing about the real crisis that we're facing right now.
I'd say mental health and education, right beside housing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously education, right? I think something else that really, really troubles me is gun violence and access to guns and people killing each other, quite frankly. I think that we've got to do something about gun violence in our community, in our state, in our country. Yeah, I think gun violence is a serious issue for us in the future, now and in the future.
I listen to all these answers and I'm thinking Wake County and Raleigh are like the best places to live and the fastest growing, and you know, there's so much money here and so much incentive for big business to come here. I wish that there was a small percentage of that went into making sure that our growth is accessible, and that includes all of these things: education, absolutely housing, mental health, physical health, transportation, access to the parks and the greenways, and you know, just little public initiatives that really are investments in our future and investments in our growth, and don't really cost as much as a tax break to a giant IT company. I'm glad they're here, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying stop bringing them here, but you know, maybe some people that actually grow up here won't feel like they're starting 4 steps behind to even try to get a job at one of those companies.
Thank you guys very much, and thank you guys for all your really thoughtful questions. Really, the Q&A is often as much a favorite part of mine as the actual talks, because we get into these other little thorny subjects too. So thank you guys, and thank you so much for coming tonight just to share your stories with all of us here. It's just like being able to share your stories here in this forum and in the magazine. It just always makes me so proud to be a part of this community and be a part of Walter as well. So before we break, I'm going to invite the Diamonds Direct people to come up and say, if you guys want to say a word or two? Yes? Okay.
Hey, y'all. Thank you for having us. We've been a sponsor of the event for several years now. I've been lucky enough to, this is my 4th. I cry a little bit at every one, but it's always so good and I'm always so inspired. So thank you. We're honored. Enjoy your night.
And I'm just going to say thank you again, because this is my job, is to say thank you. So thank you again to all of our panelists. Thank you to Bank of America. Thank you to Diamonds Direct, and to all of our workshop sponsors and workshop leaders and table sponsors for being here tonight. And I hope you guys got as much out of it as I did, and have a lovely rest of your evening. Thanks very much.